Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions live on the air. 540-0580, that's our talk line number. I already got some callers on the board, but feel free to call in. And, of course, as you know, we're a 2-hour format now, so we can answer your questions all the way up until 3 o'clock. So if you're just driving around right now or you're not sure what you want to ask or you want to get home and get that document you want to talk about on the air, whatever you want to do, 540-0580. Dave, you're on the air.
Hello, Mr. Rominger.
Yes.
Hi. I've got a question. I've got a daughter who owes a couple years of federal income tax for the IRS. In fact, it's a year 08 and 09. Now, is it legal for me to go ahead and pay her income tax, which she owes?
I think I think anybody can. I think just like any creditor, I think the government will take anybody's money on behalf of anybody. Uh-huh. But as I tell anybody who calls this show with a tax question, I'm a lawyer. Uh-huh. So the person you want to talk to is a CPA.
Uh-huh. I see.
Certified public accountant, okay?
Uh-huh. Well, let me ask you another thing.
If you're going to ask me about taxes, I'm going to tell you to ask a CPA. So if it's about taxes, no, I'm not going to answer it. If it's something else, I'll answer it.
All right. So just go ahead and pay it then, huh?
That's not what I said. I said see a CPA. Go to a certified public accountant.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
All right. No, I didn't say bad. I said talk to a CPA. Oh. 540-0580. I just had to yell a little bit there just because was I not clear? Shane, was I confusing?
I heard you.
Okay. And I always say that on the show. If you have a tax question, talk to a CPA. Lawyers are not allowed to give tax advice unless they have a little extra education, like a master's in tax, basically, is the idea. So anyhow, and I don't like to give tax advice because I talk to CPAs when I want to know about that stuff. Nava, you're on the air.
Hello. There are 6 children in my family.
Okay.
And our dad died a year ago. My one sister got his little home, and sister number 1 is to take care of everything with the finances, I guess. Sister number 2 and 3 tended to Dad and was allowed to write checks. Mm-hmm. Now, the week or so that Daddy died, sister number 1 came in and got the checkbook, and it's hard to say this, but we're not a close family, and she does not talk to us. Mm-hmm. So when we would call and ask her something, she'd just say, call the lawyer, call the lawyer. Well, I didn't call much because I'm not really interested because I don't live in Chambersburg and didn't do much for Dad.
Right.
But sister number 3 that got the home, and then a little bit, she came home one day, and Dad's car was gone, and she called the lawyer about this and that. The thing is this: what I wonder is, Sister 3 said she's called several times over the last couple months, knowing that things were closing up. There wasn't great deals of money, oh no, and we don't know how come it went this long. Mm-hmm. But what she wonders if we have the right, because she said she's asked several times for like a report on how much came in from where and how much went out from where to where, mm-hmm. how much Dad owed here or there or what was what. And she says that she has actually asked the lawyer. She has called and stopped in twice and asked, well, his secretary, though, deals with her really,
okay.
and asked for this report. She feels that we all, and especially if she's asked.
Well, if there's an estate, one of two things has to happen. If an estate's been open, somebody has to file what's called an accounting at the courthouse, which will tell you what came in and what went out and what went where.
So she would have to go to the courthouse and file an accounting.
Well, no. The person running the estate files the accounting in order to close the estate, or they get the heirs to sign off on a family agreement. What your sister probably needs to do is get hold of somebody like me, mm-hmm. and just have me write a letter to the other attorneys saying, hey, we just want to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. I was just in court Friday morning with a judge and 2 other lawyers where I represent an heir in an estate, and we just want to know what's going on. And so they were wrangling, the other siblings were wrangling over something, and I was there just to pay attention and report back.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no real wrangling except that sister number 3 isn't quite mm-hmm. trusting on things. For instance, Daddy's car, and just that it was gone, and the lawyer said it would be paid for, and she just wonders if we have the right to ask for a report of what came in and what went out and what went where.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would recommend she do that through counsel. That way it'll get high. And I did it for somebody else recently. Wrote a letter to an attorney down in Philadelphia and said, hey, trying to figure out what's going on with this estate, and he was nice enough to explain everything to me. And then I was able to go to the client and tell them, yeah, everything's copacetic. Mm-hmm. All right?
Is that real costly?
No, not very costly at all.
Okay.
All right, Nava.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you. Goodbye.
Oh, thank you. 540-0580. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, Jeff.
I got a question about the 27th Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Okay.
Which I came across the other day and never heard of it. And I was looking something up and I came across. And basically what it says is that no representative or senator can get a raise in compensation, I'm paraphrasing, except after an election, which basically says they can't get a raise in compensation every year. They have to get it every 2 years.
Yeah, I just pulled it up here. No law, comma. We always like to point out the punctuation because sometimes that can become important later. Varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect. There's after representatives and after effect, commas, until an election of representatives shall have intervened. So, yeah, if they pass a raise for themselves, there has to be at least one more election of representatives before it becomes effective.
Right. And the representatives get this COLA. And they've gotten it. Now, this was ratified. If you look at the history of this, it was ratified after 203 years. It was originally proposed back in, with the original Bill of Rights. So
now here's the issue. You ready?
Yep.
The COLA is already part of the law. So remember, it says no law, comma, whatever's in between, shall take effect, comma, until election of representatives shall have intervened. So if the law says this is what you shall be paid and you'll get a COLA, they can get that automatic COLA every year because it's not a new law. It's an old law just telling the Treasury how much to pay them each year. And so that's how that sidesteps. That's an easy one.
Oh, okay. I was wondering.
If it said, on the other hand, that there shall be no increase in compensation or decrease until an election's intervened, then it would be illegal.
Okay. Because I looked at the history, and people have sued, and instead of saying the word law was in there and that's why it's still in effect, every time it's been taken up with the courts have come back and said anybody who sues who's not a congressman or a senator
has no standing.
Has no standing, exactly.
Right. And the answer is courts would prefer to reach the standing issue anytime they can. So if you remember, there was a guy that got the American flag case all the way up to the Supreme Court about whether the under God part should be stricken or not in the pledge.
Right.
And the Supreme Court said, oh, he doesn't have standing anymore, so we don't have to decide it.
Right. So even though the concept of this is in effect,
right?
Okay, they simply can get a raise. All this says is you can't get a raise every year. You got to get a raise every
other year. But it just says no law varying the compensation shall take effect. And so if I was their lawyer, my easy answer is, Judge, this law has been in effect, and it says they get a COLA every year. So it's not a new law. It's just there. And we've had our necessary election already, which we had, 30 years ago. So leave us alone.
Okay. All right. I just thought I'd question that.
And of course, remember, this is just congressional pay. It doesn't affect anybody else.
Right, but in the midst of everything we have, I just thought this is appropriate to say, there was sort of the idea in the founders that maybe you shouldn't get a raise every year, every other year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's all. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Which, by the way, just a little side note, it was it was actually an article in the original Bill of Rights.
Right.
So it was right there with the first 10. Just didn't make the cut.
And it took 203 years to ratify it in 1992.
Right. Interesting. All right, I got to go break.
Never ratified in Pennsylvania either.
We never ratified it.
No.
Yeah. Well, our guys are never going to ratify something that limits pay. Come on, let's just be honest.
That's right.
All right, I got to go to break, Jeff. 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Oh, I guess I should make that announcement. Shane, we do have a guest, right? Booked for next week. And he's for the first hour. All right, tell everybody who it is. You remember? You don't remember, do you? You can't remember. I love
Armstrong Williams. Gotcha.
Oh, you got me. All right, yeah, we're going to have Armstrong Williams, a nationally syndicated newspaper columnist. Guy has his own satellite radio show. I'll probably get shot for mentioning the word satellite radio here. And he's going to come on and talk about a new book that he wrote next week for an hour. So if you're a fan of Armstrong Williams or you don't know anything about him, whatever, just join us next week, and he'll be here for the first hour joining me live, and he'll be taking some of your questions as well. So kind of an exciting event, you know, it's kind of a heavy. So he's going to come on and talk with us. Now, who's next here? Chad, you're on the air.
Yes, Carl. A question for you about the child custody case. It was recommended to me to do a home evaluation,
Okay.
I guess by a psychologist, and just wondering your recommendation on that. I found it's fairly pricey.
Yeah, and I was just going to, which is the lead into what I was going to say, which is anytime I have a client who can afford it, I recommend it. Unless, of course, they're so obviously unstable that I'm sure that they have no chance of doing well at it, then I might not recommend it. And, of course, somebody else will say, well, why are you getting custody for somebody who's that unstable? And the answer is, yeah, I know, that's a problem. But anyhow, all seriousness, I do recommend it if you can afford it for two reasons. Number one is quite often if you have problems with the other person, but they're things that aren't going to show in a few hours worth of hearing, or they have deep set pathologies, or you just don't think they interface well with the kids, and you think you do. A lot of times a report will reflect that, and a lot of judges will weigh heavily on what that report says, because they know that the psychiatrist or psychologist spends a lot more time with the kid than they ever will. They'll do 10 minutes in chambers if you're lucky with the kid. The custody evaluator will do hours. The custody evaluator will also observe the kid with all the different parties and is more likely to get a better answer as to what is in the child's best interest. Number two is if they come back and they don't give you the hearty recommendation that you were hoping for, quite often they'll identify what areas you need to work on in terms of either your relationship with your child or stabilizing your situation, etc. So I always tell clients, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're not going to like what you're going to hear, but it's going to give you a roadmap in your custody case. The best case scenario is you're going to like what you hear, and it's going to help you make sure that the other party, if there's real problems with them, doesn't pull the wool over the judge's eyes, so to speak. So I usually recommend them if you can afford them. The reality is, though, they're very expensive. In fact, they sometimes are more expensive than the lawyer themselves.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding. Would you have a recommendation?
Well, the short answer is if you get in contact with me off the air, I can give you some more detail, but I can tell you in this area, the two that I use most often are Stan Schneider and I think it's Arnie Scheinvold. And so I say Snyder and Scheinvold. They're both well respected. There's a few others too. Somebody's gonna call me up and say, Carl, I can't believe you didn't say my name. Deb, I'm not gonna remember her last name here in a minute. But anyhow, yeah, there's a few in the area, and some of them are willing to do partials where they just do the child, or they just do like a very limited report. Some of them just don't fool around with limited reports because they don't favor them, or they just are so busy they just go with the big stuff, so to speak. But nonetheless, a lot of times they can very effectively help the lawyers figure out where the case should go and help the parties resolve it. So, yeah, if you contact me, but either one of those guys stands with Guidance and Associates, and I think Scheinvold is like Scheinvold and Rigler or something like that. You can find both of them in the phone books around here.
All right, thank you, Carl. I appreciate it.
All right, take care, man.
You too.
Oops, cut him off a little. My thumb is sometimes a little fast. 540-0580. Rick, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl.
Hey.
I've got a question for you. I've got a relative, a cousin, who's incarcerated. He's in state prison for the next 3 to 5 years. And he asked me to be his power of attorney because he gets a monthly insurance check.
Mm-hmm.
And he had somebody doing this for him before who was in Delaware. And I don't know how she was able to cash the checks. But I've not been able to do that. So I'm sitting on like 4 or 5 months' worth of checks. Nobody will cash them. I had a power of attorney from him. And then they said, no, it's not a durable power of attorney. So he sent me a document that I think is that. But, I'm kind of stuck with this.
Right.
And he doesn't have a bank account. There is a system that's set up that you can pay that's called JPay. So they can actually get the money. It's electronic.
Correct.
And you can do it through the net. I did speak with the insurance company, and they are not able to send the checks directly to JPay because they use a different electronic system. So that's unfortunately not a possibility. It would be seamless if we could do it like that. So, my question is, how do I fix this?
Well, usually in a case like yours, because we do a lot of POAs for people that are not in jail, but we do a lot of POAs from time to time. Like a mom comes in and says, my son's in jail and I need to take care of his bills, etc. We'll write up a durable power of attorney, send it to the prisoner, and they have access to a notary in jail usually.
Right.
So what we would do is just make it specific enough and clear enough that it references that particular series of transactions so that the bank would have to accept it. And usually the other thing we can do if you're having problems with the bank is say, hey, bank, look at this power of attorney. Is it good enough for you? If it is, we'll use it. If it's not, tell us what you want in it.
Right. I went to my credit union, and they're like, look, we don't have a relationship with this guy. They were not interested in helping at all.
Right. The short answer is the other thing. If you get a hold of me off the air, I could probably talk to a bank or two for you. I know some people that in what I call the small local banks who would probably welcome some business as long as they know it's that it's not a scam.
Right. Okay, I'll give you a call. Thank you.
All right, Rick. Take care, brother.
Okay.
540-0580, Carl Rominger answering your legal questions here. I guess we just announced, in case you didn't hear it, we're going to have Armstrong Williams on for an hour beginning next week. So tune in next Saturday, and Armstrong will be on during the first hour. James, you're on the air.
Hi, Mr. Rominger. How are you?
Good.
Question I got for you is, my great-great-grandfather, okay, he had 50,000 acres of land, okay, at a ranch. He never sold the mineral rights, but he sold the land.
Okay.
The present owner, I don't know how long he's been on there, but he says, well, now that I've owned this land for this long, I think I should own mineral rights. Of course, we don't want to give those up because there's a good chance there's some oil there. Does he have any grounds for that?
And what state's this ranch in?
Nebraska.
Well, see, there's your answer. I have no idea.
Yeah.
The law of property is state-specific.
Okay.
Every state has its own statutes and ways of devising these things. So you'd have to talk with a Nebraska lawyer.
Yeah. What if it was just a hypothetical, if it was in Pennsylvania?
If it was in Pennsylvania, the short answer is if the deed, depending on how the deed was written, did it reserve the mineral rights or it just didn't talk about the mineral rights?
It reserved them.
Yeah. Well, then theoretically, I don't think that you can get it just by living on it.
Right.
So it would seem like the person would not be entitled to them in my thumbnail sketch.
Yeah.
But how that's going to play out in other states, you have to understand, like, I'll give you an example. If you're drilling for natural gas in Pennsylvania and you're going for Marcellus shale gas,
right,
the law is on those mineral rights one way. If you're drilling for natural gas in other geological formations, the law is a little different, and you have to share with your neighbors, and you have to do a whole scheme for profit sharing with land based on where the gas actually is, kind of a pooling concept.
Right.
So anyhow, my point being is, just even in our own state, how the mineral rights play out for natural gas just depends on where it is in the depth in the ground and what geological formation it's in.
Right.
And one affects your rights are different in those particular minerals, even though it's the same mineral, just where it's found. So my point is Nebraska could have a who knows what scheme.
Right.
So
all right.
Sorry about that.
No, hey, I appreciate it. I just wanted to get your input.
Yeah, maybe we'll expand a Nebraska law someday, but I don't really want to have to answer legal questions from all 50 states. I have enough trouble getting Pennsylvania law right most days.
I understand. I listen to you all the time on radio, and I sure appreciate your input, though.
Hey, thank you very much.
All right, you take care.
Take care. Yeah, that's the problem, folks. Every state, there's 50 of them, and there's, what do I want to say, some protectorates and all those good things. And as a result, each one has its own body of law. D.C. actually has its own laws as well. So, and it's not even a state, right? It's just a district. So when you got to call them with a legal question, just think Pennsylvania law. And, of course, the danger of that, even giving an answer hypothetically, what if it was in Pennsylvania, is that's sort of like asking, what if I was on the moon? The odds of you ever being, who cares? It's not going to be a good answer because I have no way to know whether our law is either the exact opposite, the exact same, or some variation of another state's. And, in fact, it's not unusual for states to handle things very differently. So, for instance, here in Pennsylvania, we have a very different way of looking at water and the law of water than, say, in Colorado or New Mexico, where it's a scarce resource. So their laws are developed very differently. And same with property, etc. Let's see here. Stephen, you're on the air. Steve.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate your show.
Hey, thank you.
I just have a question on immigration law.
Yeah.
I'm aware of a situation where a young girl came over on a medical visa from Liberia 6 or 7 years ago, I believe. She is still here. The woman who originally sponsored her passed away, and another family took her in. She recently turned 18, and now she wants to stay in America. Any idea on what she would need to do?
Yeah, and the short answer is she would need to contact an immigration lawyer because that is a highly specialized situation. And I know that, the short answer is I know from experience dealing with clients that are here either illegally or legally, the mere fact that your visa's expired or the mere fact that you're here illegally doesn't preclude you from applying for and getting either a valid visa or green card or citizenship. So the first thing she should do is consult with an immigration lawyer and figure out what steps she needs to take to bring herself into compliance for being here in the first place, and then what she needs to do to apply for citizenship or permanent resident status, which would probably be the first thing on that. Because citizenship, you have to get the other thing first. So anyhow, that's just me thinking out loud, but that's the best advice I give her. If you guys contact my office, we'll refer you to an immigration lawyer down in York that we usually send people to.
Oh, that'd be great. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, just call when you call in the office. Say I talked to Carl on the radio, and his name's Andy. Just say you want to get in contact with Andy, the immigration lawyer, and we'll get you referred out.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Got to go to break, guys. Hang on, 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. Just answering your legal questions today, or if you want to talk about, like the Constitution, or I always like to invite people who have a story too. If you had a dealing with the court system and you want to just kind of tell us what happened, I'm always curious to hear about that. And particularly if you were on a jury and you experienced jury service, where I was curious to know about that and also what you thought. I always like to hear the insights. What happened back there in the jury room? What were we talking about? The lawyer said this and the judge said that, but let me tell you how we really did it. Those kinds of stories. So I'll invite those if you got any. 540-0580. Mike, you want to talk about guns?
Well, actually, what I wanted to talk about, Carl, is the Castle Doctrine actually goes into effect. The modified Castle Doctrine, I believe, the 29th of this month.
Correct.
And I had heard you quoted, or either read you were quoted in the paper, where you said, in some ways, the new law reduced rights that we already had. And I was very interested in hearing your view on that.
Yeah. Where I thought the new law was problematic is it basically says that you're not entitled to stand your ground in your own house if you're using the house to facilitate a crime. And the law is written in such a way that it's pretty clear, it's actually very clear, that it doesn't mean the crime being perpetrated. So, theoretically, prosecutors didn't want me to have somebody in my house, I invite you over and we get in a fight, I pull a gun on you and I shoot you, and then I claim I want to invoke my right to stand my ground and not retreat in self-defense. But they put in there a provision that says any violation on, so the way it's written, and just the best way to say it is, if I have some firecrackers in my garage, or an ounce of marijuana in my dresser drawer, or you just go on and on, think of all the things that would be unrelated to the incident that happened.
Right.
I'm not entitled to use the law because the house that I was in was being used in the commission of a crime, and it doesn't have to be the crime or a crime that has anything to do with the self-defense incident.
Right.
So they quietly stripped that of you out of there. And I'm trying to remember, there was a couple other little points in there. I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me, but I just felt like they really watered it down. And the other thing that I thought, where it wasn't a rollback of a right, but where I thought it was kind of a false bill of sale, is you can't stand your ground if the other guy doesn't have the deadly weapon visible or present.
Mm-hmm.
And so if some guy's got his hand in his hoodie, yeah, I'm going to blow you away. Well, I want to wait and see whether he's got a comb or a gun in his hoodie. Guess what? I got to retreat because I don't have the ability to stand my ground yet. So some clever prosecutor, and here in the mid-state, we had the one up there with the beer distributorship where it was a little questionable. They wanted to prosecute the guy for a couple days or something, which so maybe I should retract and say here in the mid-state you're not safe. But here in the mid-state, our prosecutors, Freed, Marsico, York, Kearney, those guys seem very sensible. They're all fair people, and they're not going to go after somebody in a situation like that. But you go down, you start driving east on the turnpike, and then you might be second guessed.
Yeah, and I thought maybe that was some of what you were talking about.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If I was going to defend myself, I'd want to do it north of the 80.
Yeah. Well, actually, I used to be a firearm instructor.
Okay.
And I used to tell the students, I said, the last thing you ever want to do is to shoot somebody.
Well, I always have to tell Durgan that. Durgan's Durgan's like, I'm going to put a target on my door, and if the guy walks between me and the target, I'm just going to shoot him. And I'm like, well, Bob, maybe you might work that way, but now you've said it on the radio, I'm not sure it's going to work that way.
Well, he's going to go to prison because, invariably in my classes, people used to say, well, if he falls outside and moves the body. I said, well, that'll get you 7 years guaranteed because you interfered with the crime scene.
Yeah, and the hardest thing for most people to understand is I like to talk to them about it because I go out and I was out at the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers a while ago, and then I did it at the Gap about a year ago. And any other club, by the way, if you're a member of a fish and game club out there and you want me to come give a talk, I kind of give a little overview of self-defense law from the defense lawyer's standpoint. And that's one of the things I explain to people. Like, the hardest thing to do is just to shut up.
Right.
You've just shot a guy. You're probably going crazy. The police are there asking you what happened, and you want to tell them everything because you want to explain exactly why you did what you did.
Right.
And in the meantime, this guy's job is to try to ferret out what, quote, really happened, and you think he's going to start from the proposition that you did nothing wrong. But if I'm a police officer and I show up and there's a dead body on the floor, I'm starting from the proposition that this is a homicide investigation.
That's correct. In fact, one of the courses, I think it was a self-defense course, NRA certified, requires that it be taught in conjunction with an attorney that practices law in your state.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. The other problem is, let's just talk about gun laws for another second here. They did put in the Castle Doctrine something that makes it clear that my handgun's not loaded just because I have a loaded clip in the same bag as it, as long as they're in different compartments.
Right.
Because we had people getting zapped for having a loaded gun when they really didn't have a loaded gun.
Yeah, it used to be you had to separate them. You had to have the gun one had to be in the trunk, one in the compartment of the car, or you ran the risk of being charged with a loaded weapon.
Yeah, and it's to me that was just crazy. Now here's my other. Obviously, with a concealed carry permit, you can keep your gun loaded in the car. I'm not certain that regulation really makes sense to me either, though. Why can't I have a loaded gun in my car if I can have a loaded gun in my house as long as I'm not carrying it around the Walmart without the permit? But I can open carry it, so why not that?
The argument I used to make is that when you make people unload a firearm, you increase the risk of an accidental discharge.
Yeah.
Because when you're having to rack the slide and do this and do that, and if people don't do it all the time and they aren't familiar, just the risk of an accidental discharge goes up. So my advice is have the gun loaded, have the safety on, and then don't mess with it unless you need it.
And what's funny about that is, okay, so here's the next thing. You go to almost any government facility where they require people to unload their firearms before they enter. Right. And what do they have? They have a clearing barrel, right?
Right.
Because they recognize that the likelihood of guys who have theoretically a lot of training are still likely to accidentally discharge just because you're forcing them to load and unload.
It happens.
Yeah. Very interesting, Mike. Thanks for calling in.
Sometime I'll call in, Carl. You want to know a story on a jury? I was actually on a jury involving a firearms issue here in Dauphin County.
Well, here, can you call back at 2 o'clock?
Sure can.
All right, we'll call back at 2 o'clock, and I want to hear it.
All right.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
540-0580. Donna.
Hello.
Yes, Donna.
Okay. I'm listening to all these conversations. I got a little rankled. Okay. We have a young girl relative, over 18, who got pregnant from the boyfriend and has a baby now.
Okay.
And on welfare, and we try to, follow up with the boyfriend, get some kind of responsibility, and find out at 23, this is his 5th child with 3 girlfriends. Now, isn't there some kind of responsibility he could be held for? Or the girl is with the baby. All the girls are with their baby.
Oh, yeah.
For the next 18 years or whatever. And the boy just walks around. For the next 20 years, he can do this 10, 15 more times.
Sure, why not?
And nothing, no repercussions from anybody.
The short answer is...
I told the father to get the shotgun out of the closet, but of course he'd end up in jail.
And that's the interesting question. The short answer is no. There's no repercussions because we don't actually have social responsibility in the law if you think about it. And at the end of the day, they're allowed to take so much of his pay for child support. But he
hasn't worked since he got out of school. I think he sells weed or something like that. Whatever.
So here's the next question. The girl that hooked up with him, right? The relative. I assume she knew he had a bunch of kids.
I don't know. I don't know if she knew or not. We didn't think so, but who knows?
Because once in a while, I get the client, I get the young lady who's sure that this guy, even though he has 6,
would be the only one,
right?
Yes.
Even though he had 6 kids with 6 other women, she will never get stiffed for child support because they're in love.
Yeah.
And I always get a little chuckle out of that one. I'm like, the writing was on the wall. On the other hand, though, yeah, that's a tough position to be in. And you know who the real loser is the kid, right? All the kids.
Yeah.
Because they've got this deadbeat guy who's not going to do anything. In other countries,
and this doesn't do the welfare system any good either.
Well, no, absolutely not. And Donna, just interestingly, in other countries where you are allowed to have multiple marriages, and in some states, probably Utah included, where you could de facto have multiple marriages, it's not considered legal in those countries, or it's not considered ethical or religiously moral in the right religions to take more than one wife if you can't economically support them. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting because we don't really regulate anything directly like that here in the United States. We don't say, okay, you can only have so many children. And the flip side is we don't want to be like China. And you hope people do the responsible thing. But you're right. There's a pile of people out there whose chief pastime is procreation. And I don't think they use it as recreation. I think they just use, I'm going to have another baby. Why not? It makes me feel good to have a baby.
Oh,
so
he got proud, yeah. Yeah, when everybody found out about it, when the family and all that, he was proud about it. Oh, yeah, he's got kids, I know.
Donna, I don't know what to tell you except good luck. Hopefully the family rallies behind this girl, and she needs to find a better class of guy.
I know. But, young love, they think they know it all.
Well, yeah, I think I know it all now, and I know in another 10 years I'm going to look back and go, what an idiot.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you.
All right.
I hope somebody thinks about doing something about such things. Oh.
Get the gun.
Right.
Or a knife.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 540-0580. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. I just want to remind you guys, we've got offices in Lancaster, Chambersburg, Carlisle, Harrisburg. Pretty much if you can hear this signal, we can help you. And if you need us on an emergency basis, or on a regular basis, so to speak, just call the office. Go to RomingerLaw.com to find it, and go to weekendappointment.com as well to find our contact information. I've got 5 great lawyers working for me, make 6 of us total, and a support staff so we can take care of your needs. I just want to remind you that it's always an honor when one of you calls me for something. And sometimes it's just a quick question. And, if it's just a quick question, just call here on the air if you can get through, and you can get it answered for free. But the problem is, and remember this, these answers and these questions are just that. They're just little overviews, and we don't always have time to get into all the details that make a difference. And, sometimes when I'm training a young lawyer, they'll look at me and they'll be like, wow, that's really complicated. And I'll be like, well, that's why we have to get all the education. We have to think about these things and spend so much time on it, is because things that are seemingly simple always end up to be a little more complicated than you want to be, and you want to try to give the right advice. And you want to make sure you're giving people the right direction for their particular problem. And a lot of times that requires you to check 2 things, which is as much factual information as possible, but also the law and all the interplays of the law. And as you know, if you're a regular listener to this show, the law is not always logical or linear. A should be B, therefore we should get to C. And a lot of times you end up with E, and they skip D, or somehow you got right to Z, and you're like, how did that happen? And you just have to know it, or you have to find it. And a lot of times we just don't know it. We have to look it up. Steve, you're on the air.
Yes, Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, what's going on?
This is a situation that does not involve me personally, but it involves a young lady who is like a daughter to me.
Okay.
She was in an abusive marriage for about 16 years, finally got out, had no money. She's since been diagnosed with MS, so she's unable to work. So basically her income right now consists of donations from friends and from people in the church and a little bit of SSDI.
Okay.
Now, when she got the divorce, it was just the basic divorce. There was no division of property or anything else. Now, her ex still has her name on his car title and registration. And the property they were living in was getting billed for water by the water company, and he was getting the bills and he was just turning them back. He never did anything about it, so they sued her for this.
Right.
Now, is there some way or another that we can excuse me. If I understand correctly, as long as both their names are on these documents, they're both liable.
Yeah, theoretically, in a divorce situation, each of them is independently liable based on what they've signed, what they're obligated to, but they may also be obligated to each other through the divorce as well. So, for instance, if you got a husband and wife and they're both on the Visa card, okay, and they owe Visa $5,000, and the wife files for bankruptcy, and she gets out of her, so Visa can only go after the husband now. The husband can still go back to the divorce court and say, hey, wait a minute, she got out of this $5,000 debt through bankruptcy, but it's still marital debt, and I still think she should pay half of it, and the judge will say, I agree.
Okay. Well, she had filed for Chapter 13, was unable to make her payments because she didn't have the money.
Right.
So now she said this coming year she's going to file for Chapter 7. But he's been negligent on his support. And she says, I can't sue him because if I do, they're going to go after his wages. He'll just quit his job and he'll just work under the table somewhere, so they won't be able to take his wages, garnish his wages.
The short answer on that one is if he voluntarily reduces his pay after she's filed for support, they're not going to let him do that. And he's going to end up spending some time in jail because the support order is going to be based on what he used to make.
Okay. What about the situation now where the both names are on the card title and the registration? Because he could pull something there and just skip town. She'd be stuck liable for it again.
Yep. She needs to resolve that. She probably needs to move forward on the divorce and get everything disentangled.
Well, it has been finalized. They've been divorced now for, 2 years?
So that's some sloppy work. They forgot to handle that, huh?
Well, she said if they were going to divide up the property, it was going to cost them more.
Yeah, well, that's and now they're just like you and me owning a car title together. So she'd have to sue to wind it down, and that's not going to be easy. That's going to be more expensive. So lesson learned to anybody listening is handle all the property issues in the divorce. Don't do these stupid online things by yourself, or don't do the fly-by-night through the newspaper thing and then wonder why you have these problems later. But that's just me thinking out loud.
Okay, well, that was what we were wondering about. So that helps us out a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, Steve, if I can help, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
All right. 540-0580. And, of course, remember, we're going to be live all next hour as well. Jay, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, I'm pacing the floor. I'm hot and bothered. I was going to call about my jury experience in a murder trial in Philadelphia. But on the way up here, I was two things. I'm in my car, and there's two motorcyclists in front of me without helmets, which is legal.
Right.
But it's illegal for me not to have a seatbelt. Well, the law should be logical, and I get ticked because lawyers and the Bar Association, and most of the legislators are lawyers by trade, doesn't rise up in righteous indignation and say that laws should be made for the betterment of most people, and they should be logical, and they should make sense. I don't think politics should come into law. Now, I'm railing, and you don't have an answer for that, really, I don't think.
Well, no, and politics and law are kind of inseparable because politics is basically the administration of law through whatever power structure the people choose. And, of course, we've chosen a representative democracy.
We put a bought by special interests representative democracy as it's become.
Yeah, I agree with you to an extent, but if we go back in time, I think about 3 days after they created the current system of government, they went, "Ooh, boy, this is really turning out a little different than we intended." Because if you remember political parties, for instance, the immediate creation of parties was something that a few of the founding fathers were like, "Wait a minute, we shouldn't have parties." We never anticipated that. And, of course, the parties from the beginning have entrenched themselves, Republican or Democrat, at this point, but there are obviously different parties in the beginning. But the point is there's always been two parties firmly entrenched, and the one thing they can always agree on is that there shouldn't be a third or fourth party.
Well, I'm an old IT guy, so we always did things logically, Yeah. That's how we programmed. We had to.
Now, here's the other problem, though, because I had an IT friend who used to say, you lawyers, problem with you lawyers is you're not logical enough. And as I always used to say to him, the problem is every once in a while you can do an A plus B equals C, and that's just the way it's going to be. And then we can just start twisting the factual scenarios around until somebody's rotting in jail for something that just seems like they shouldn't be. And in the meantime, somebody else is getting away with murder, literally, because we followed A plus B equals C. And that's always the difference between
Justice tendered with mercy, like
right.
Shakespeare.
Right. That's always the difference between a bright line test and a...
I'm going to rail, but the other thing I'm railing about, being, of course, from Philadelphia, is a statement not too long ago. You get a lot of calls from gun aficionados, especially about the Castle Doctrine.
Correct.
And you made a statement about, hey, you try that east of here, and it may not work. Now, I'm not from this area. I mean, I've been here for 35 years. You have a lot of people that talk about drunk driving and hard drinking, and it seems to me like the Durganites, or Bob certainly with his statement, wants to shoot somebody as opposed to protect his property. They seem to have this, I want to go out and shoot.
Everybody likes first-party shooter games. Come on.
I think you guys are Midwestern, you know what I mean?
I know.
Central PA is Midwestern, I mean,
All right, Jay, love you. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Bye.
All right, guys, we'll be here through the next hour, 540-0580. If you're on the phone right now, you can hold or just call back. I'll see you guys in a little bit.